As a game settles into the marketplace, it adjusts and grows with expansions. Power levels usually become less conservative, components are added to patch issues, and components are removed because they don't work. This is a side effect of the dev team having more experience and seeing how the community reacts to their work. This couldn't be more true for the progenitor of the medium itself, Magic the Gathering. Magic today is quite different from the original 1993 to 1995 era. Syntax, terminology, frame, colour pie, and the prominence of creatures within the game, just to name a few differences. But there is one notable mechanic that was considered quite contentious back then for its complexity and is a source of ridicule today. Banding. Banding is one of the earliest keywords in Magic, being from the original Alpha set. Banding has gone down in the history of Magic as an overly complex mechanic that was universally hated, put on some exceptionally garbage cards. So what does banding actually do? A creature with banding can attack with any other number of creatures with banding and one without. This is known as a band. They don't share keywords. If any are blocked, all are blocked as a group, and the attacker is allowed to allocate the damage the blocker will deal among the band. Banding can be done in reverse too, blocking. A creature with banding can band with any number of creatures without banding as a blocking party. As with attacking with a band, the player using the band allocates the damage from the attacker among the band. That's the core concept of banding, forming a party and allocating the damage among that party. Banding is mostly associated with white. Nearly 80% of the cards with banding are white, and in terms of flavour, it is meant to represent your summons coming together to push through your opponent's defences or guard you from a larger threat. Banding would be abandoned after 1997's Weatherlight, a set that contained the last two standard legal cards with banding. The key issue with banding, I believe, is that it is two related mechanics bound together at the hip. Banding functions similarly, but very differently, depending on whether you are attacking or blocking. This is what bloats the keyword. This is very likely why Nalathni Dragon is the only card with reminder text for banding, and only the MTG Online promo version at that. The card doesn't even have the space to talk about how it functions on defense, which just adds to the confusion. Not that reminder text was common way back when. It was only added to the game with Mirage in 1996. It's not that banding is complex, at least not in my opinion. Individually, attacking with a band and blocking with a band are simple enough concepts. It just takes a bit of space to explain. Too much, especially both at once. In my research for this video, I looked up banding on the Storm scale, the rating that Mark Rosewater gives mechanics to indicate whether they will return or not. Mark gives banding a 10, the highest rating only given to abandoned mechanics. This is unsurprising given that the keyword is something of a running joke now. Rather interestingly, he states my exact sentiments. It's multiple effects under the same keyword. Looking up the original rulebook from Magic the Gathering, of which Wizards of the Coast has a transcript of on their site, the same thing comes up again. Banding has two effects. The book goes on to explain both sides of banding. Both are fairly lengthy in terms of reminder text, but they are not complex concepts. It's explained quite clearly. I'm actually at a loss as to why it was considered so complex that it had to be removed in its entirety. I do not believe it to be a complex concept. So what does this have to do with the Final Fantasy TCG? This video was called Bands with Final Fantasy for a reason, wasn't it? Well, Final Fantasy incorporates a version of banding into their main rule set, and no one bats an eye. Its party attack system is a vastly less restrictive, but altered, version of banding. In Final Fantasy, you can send multiple forwards out to attack together as a party. No keyword required. The power is the sum of all the forwards' power If they deal damage, they only deal 1. Keywords are not shared, and the party is considered one entity for blocking. The blocker gets to allocate damage. There is no defensive version of this. This mechanic is mostly just used to get past large forwards you otherwise wouldn't be able to defeat, but at least one of your forwards will die from the crossfire. The only way to avoid this is with a party of first strikers versus something without first strike. Your forwards might be let through anyway, since it's still only 1 damage. No one seems to have issues understanding party attack. It's a complete non-issue. It's only useful in certain circumstances, much like how banding was originally intentioned. A defensive version, party defense, not existing is interesting though. It's interesting because banding itself was arguably more useful on defense rather than attacking. A creature swings in, you only need 1 creature with banding, and you can rather easily defeat the attacking creature and not lose your best creatures since you decide how damage is allocated. That is the key to the difference between Magic and Final Fantasy. Party attack gives you an option out of a bad situation, while banding puts all control over combat into the banding player's hands. Going back to what Mark Rosewater had to say on the matter, he stated that banding would never return, but elements of it may. I really think just breaking banding into the 2 mechanics it really was would have been the correct choice. Some cards gain an attack version of banding, some gain a defensive version of banding. Of course, they wouldn't be called banding, and it might have to be adjusted in other ways. But I don't think the concept had to be completely removed. It's still thematic to white, and arguably red. A group of creatures band together to overcome an obstacle or stop a creature. The flavour is still really relevant to the game. Think about it this way. A legendary white soldier with our hypothetical attack banding effect and a +1/+1 anthem effect for all white soldiers that band with it for the battle. That's really flavoursome. Or put our hypothetical defensive version of banding on a creature with defender. Its theme is already defense, so play with it. Maybe bring back walls. There's some really cool stuff to be had here. I really don't think banding deserves the crap it gets. It's not complex in terms of being difficult to understand. It's complex in terms of doing too much and taking a rather large amount of text to explain. It's not bad though. I think the community really needs to give the joke up. It's not funny once you look into it, and Wizards could really go back to that well and tweak it. It wouldn't be the first time they've gone back and replaced older effects with tweaked ones. Fear would be replaced by Intimidate, which would go on to be replaced by Menace as one such example. Both Amonkhet's Aftermath and Guilds of Ravnica's Jumpstart both serve similar mechanical functions to the much older flashback. There are likely many more examples of this. What I hope to achieve today is to take an actual look at banding with my own eyes, rip away all the snide comments and give it an honest look. What I found is very typical of games starting out, a concept with a lot of merit that was poorly executed, a mechanic that needed more development to work smoothly, but wasn't actually bad. So tell me, what do you think? Did banding need more work, or was Wizards right to abandon it? Tell me down below. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and thanks for watching.